Hello and welcome to the Thursday, August 2nd, 2012 Audit Committee meeting. We'll call the meeting to order. Thank you for being here. Let's start off with a approval of our last committee meeting dated June 7th, 2012. Anybody have any questions or objections to those?
Move approval, Aguilar.
We have a second?
Second, Entenmann.
We have a motion to approve the minutes. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That's very good. Thank you. We'll move on to our first audit report. Rich, the quality of life bonds.
Yes, this was on our annual audit plan, and the quality of life bonds were two bond issues. One was in 2007, one was in 2009 for various park and library projects. Including the main library, the West Side Branch Library, and numerous other projects. The audit objectives were four, to determine if the projects that were identified in the ordinance were initiated and completed, whether the bond proceeds were used for authorized projects and only for authorized projects and other authorized costs. Number three, to determine if the bond issues are being paid back on schedule and from the authorized source. And number four, did the Drake Springs pool project, which was funded by the first bond issue, did that stay within the voter-approved limits of the May 2007 municipal election? The results from the audit were positive. We didn't have any audit issues or audit recommendations. All the projects have been initiated. Some are completed or substantially completed, and a number are still in progress. For example, the West Side Branch Library, it was under design, and now they've just let the contract in May, so that's just getting going. The Drake Springs is obviously that's completed. The main library is substantially completed. But anyway, all the projects have been initiated. And objective two, the bonds proceeds have been used for identified projects and other authorized costs. We didn't find any examples of bond proceeds being used for anything other than what they were supposed to be used for. We did some sampling, and we identified, the costs that have been paid year to date or life to date on various projects, and we detailed that in the report. You'll notice on some of the projects, some were funded completely by the quality of life bonds, such as Drake Springs. Others had been initiated prior to the bond issue, like the main library, so some of the funds came from the second penny, a little bit from the library fines. And another project is that junior football complex by the Sanford Sports Complex. That has had about $4.2 million from the quality of life bonds, but there will also be money that will be coming from the South Dakota junior football, so it's kind of a joint project there. And objective three was whether the bond issues are being paid back on schedule and from the authorized source, and we found that they were. The authorized source would be that second penny sales tax for the debt service. Objective four, that election in May 2007 to approve the pool project at Drake Springs, the voters indicated that the cost of the project was not to exceed $4.7 million. According to the language that was on the ballot, and we found that it did not exceed that. They spent right up to that limit and no more, $4.699 million. The bulk of the money was used for the general contractor, Swift Construction, and also for the design work, for the design and engineering contract administration. So they certainly stayed within the limits that the voters had imposed. So just for point of information, on our audit plan for the year, we also have the downtown Greenway project, which is part of that quality of life issue. We haven't initiated that project yet, but that is on the audit plan. We'll be looking at that in more detail when we start that project. So if anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to answer those questions.
Councilor Rolfing.
Thank you. On the Harmon Park, I see that you've got an asterisk by that. I looked at that and it said, where was it? I saw that. It's Harmon Park under design, but then you've got a note on number 1, under design refers to current phase, however, most project is completed.
Yeah. We had initially looked at the monthly financial report that the council receives, and
Right.
in the detail, they have a column, for kind of a status, and we had noticed that when I sent the draft to my staff, they said, under design, and I thought the same thing. So we had that conversation with finance. He said, well, technically it is under design because it's under a certain phase of the contract. However, it's obviously being used, and
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any idea what's left to be done out there? Or?
I'm not sure exactly what's left to be done. This was as of April, when we looked at the April monthly report. I think there's still some improvements. I can't tell you exactly
I
what
wonder
those
if
are.
some of that road is still left to be done or something like that.
It
in
could
there.
be. I know the park department could give you more details on that, what's
Okay.
left on that project.
I hope it's not
Eh.
9 million of that or something. It's going to be awful nice if we put another 9 million into
Yeah.
it.
And also that West Side Branch Library says it's under design, but that was as the end of April. The contract was let in May to start the construction, so.
Okay.
Any other questions about this audit?
Move approval, Rolfing.
Second Aguilar.
Okay, very good. We've got a motion to approve or accept the audit. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Very good, thank you, Rich. We'll move on to the next item, the internal auditor vacancy.
Yes, as you probably were, Danette, seated to my left, just started recently. She replaced one of our auditors that retired last year. As you probably know, Tim Boosman from our office, his last day was about 2 weeks ago, so we had another vacancy. We had interviews this week. We interviewed 4 finalists. Interviewing were me, Ann Opgard from the committee, and Jane Hannestad from HR. And I'm pleased to say that we were unanimous in agreeing on a candidate to make an offer to. I can't give you the name of the person, but that person has agreed to a contingent offer. HR just informed me. The tentative start date would be August 20th. The offer is contingent upon the background check, the drug screen, and the reference check. So if all of that comes through, then the offer will be final, and that person would start on tentatively August 20th. So then we'll have more information for you later. So that's all I'm at liberty to say in public. So
Councilor Rolfing.
There will be a credit check on that too?
they do a credit check.
Okay, just- you did mention
criminal
that. I wanted to
background
make sure.
check, and they do a credit check. And,
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions about the vacancy? You know, we still do have a vacancy on this board for a citizen to serve, and we are still looking for that person. I've been talking to a couple people, but just to make sure you all are aware of that as well, if you're talking to somebody who you think would be a good fit for this group, reach out to them, and we could staff our committee to its fullest level. Okay, very good. We'll move on to the next item then, Rich, the status of various audit projects.
Yeah, I just thought I'd give the committee an update. We've been kind of short of an auditor we've been short-staffed, basically, but we're pretty much staying on track with our annual audit plan. We finished, I believe we have, looks like 8 reports that we've finished or completed this year. They're listed under reports completed this year. In progress, Danette is working on the purchasing and procurement audit. We'll be wrapping that up fairly soon. The light department is pretty much done. We just have to discuss the results with management. Tim had worked on that audit, so I'll be doing that shortly with Public Works to discuss the audit findings in the report. Fraud risk assessment, that's my project, and I'm just beginning. I'll be meeting with directors soon to get some information on fraud risks. Things that are not started yet are the library's audit. We have a meeting scheduled next week with library's management team. Danette will be working on that. The other projects we haven't started yet are the water, utility billing office, River Greenway, which we mentioned briefly, the Ryan White Title III grant, health department, and then the event center. That'll be kind of an ongoing thing now that we start breaking ground on that project and we start getting those pay requests. I'll be working with the consultant with Tegra. I think his name is Dick Strasberg. We've already had a meeting a few months ago about that, kind of the areas that we'll be looking at, working together on that, because once that gets rolling, The pay requests will be coming in fast and furious, probably as much as $1 million a week in pay requests once the project is going. So we need to be looking at that. So if there's any questions, I'd be.
Any questions of the various projects Rich is working on? And Rich, is there, do you have some time in your schedule if there should be another audit recommended by a council member or this body?
Well, we're probably at the point where maybe one of these projects we won't be able to start this year. We'd have to carry it over to next year that are on the plan. As far as a special request, it'd be a little tight to get it in unless it was a really short duration. So that would be the judgment of the committee if they wanted me to, make our special request a priority and kind of bump another project back into next year.
Okay, very good.
Yeah.
Any questions regarding the list that Rich has? Okay, very good. Then we'll move on to the next item, changes to the internal audit charter.
Yeah. Danette has put up on the screen for the viewing audience kind of an initial discussion of changes to the internal audit charter. And the internal audit charter was adopted back in July of 2006, and I believe it's a 4-page document, and I have copies here for the committee if they want to take them with them. It is on the website, too, under the internal audit section. The charter kind of gives us our marching orders. It tells us what our authority is, what our scope of work is, our independence, who we report to, that sort of thing, and it's a best practice for internal audit departments. We've not changed it since 2006, and as the lead auditor, it's my responsibility to review that and recommend changes to the audit committee. And so some of the changes that I would like to suggest would be certainly, we've made changes in the org chart where there isn't any line for me to the city clerk anymore. But there's references in the audit charter, several references to my position reporting to the city clerk. So we need to make that consistent with the org chart. And then the second bullet point, Danette, do you want to put up that other document? My title is Lead Internal Auditor, and that title is not really used anywhere else. I did a survey using the membership directory of the Association of Local Government Auditors. I get the directory every year, and I went through and I totaled up all the organizations that belong to ALGA that have 5 or fewer auditors, so small audit shops. And you can see the list, and I just looked at municipalities in the United States and Canada. And the most common title for my position would be city auditor. There's other titles, obviously, but that was certainly the most common. And as I said, that lead internal auditor isn't anywhere to be found in the directory. If you had that title, it would typically be in a place where you had a city auditor and a deputy auditor and an audit manager and then a lead auditor and then an auditor, where you'd have like 4 or 5 different positions. That's what I would recommend to the committee, that maybe we just change the title and make it more consistent with what other cities do. If you go back to that other document there, Danette. One thing we might want to consider putting in the charter is just kind of formalize that process for special requests that we just mentioned. We do have a process, but it's just sort of a standalone procedure. It might be good to put that in the audit charter, that the audit committee approves special requests for audits that aren't on the annual plan. One thing I would suggest is that we establish that the internal audit staff report to the city auditor, and it already says that the lead auditor reports to the chair. So that might be it, to formalize that. The next bullet point, it says establish that the title of the internal audit function will be city auditor's office to avoid confusion with the IRS. I, from time to time, get calls from citizens thinking that they're calling the IRS office. And I did ask a citizen one time, why did you call this office? And they said, well, in the particular directory I'm looking at, it says IRS and it says your number. So apparently, when you put internal audit, sometimes that gets picked up in directories or phone books. When people are doing a Google search, I think we could still call it, the Internal Audit Office among ourselves, but maybe in the city directory, we could call it the City Auditor's Office. Actually, by my phone, I have the number of the local IRS office because I get that call a lot. I think I have the number almost memorized. So I've gotten calls on my voicemail that were in a foreign language, and I think they were mad at the IRS because they sounded angry, and I didn't know what the language was. But that's just a little thing, not a big deal. On page 3, I would suggest changing the wording slightly. We're in the process of developing a fraud policy, and that'll come before the council at some point this year. So I think just to make that, make it clear that, make that language a little clearer that we would do our investigations in accordance with the fraud control policy adopted by the City of Sioux Falls. Like I said, these are just kind of a start of a discussion points. What I would recommend to the committee is that perhaps next month next meeting come back to you with a copy of the original charter and then proposed changes in red perhaps. Work with Jim David from the City Council office. Talk to the city attorney and ask him if the audit committee can change the charter or if we have to present that as a resolution to the full council. And if there's any ordinances that we would need to change. So I'm just, I guess, asking permission to keep moving, working on this project, or take any questions that you might have at this point. So,
Councilor Rolfing.
The other thing that popped into my mind as I was going through this is also check with HR to make sure that, that changing from lead internal auditor to city auditor doesn't, move a pay situation or do something like that.
I wouldn't seek a pay difference, but I certainly think we need to have a conversation with HR if they would have any objections to that title change. We do have a city attorney and we do have a city clerk, so we do have some precedent, and I think we do have the city engineer. We have some of those titles. On that list of titles, I know some of the cities call their chief audit executive a director. I know that would not be a good idea because we have a specific meaning for directors in the City of Sioux Falls, and that would probably not be a good idea. So certainly talk to the city attorney about this, talk to HR.
Councilor Aguilar.
Where is the internal audit charter found? I mean, is it in ordinance?
It is adopted by resolution.
Okay.
Yeah, it's by resolution, and then they just, it was adopted in July of 2006. So it went through a city council meeting, but in the document itself, in the charter, it says that any amendment is subject to review and approval by the audit committee. So I guess the city attorney would have to weigh in and say, does that mean that from this point forward, the audit committee can go ahead and make the changes, or does it have to come back to the full council and then be adopted by a resolution?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Anybody else on that? Councilor Intiman.
Yeah, Councilor Jameson, I really like, looking at the names that we have here, Rich. I think, what really defines your function is the internal audit manager. I think that really defines when we talk about internal auditor and stuff like that. I think that really defines what you're doing by managing that specific department. So I guess, in the conversation that we might have with HR, Councilor Jameson, I would suggest that we, look at these names and maybe that's something that might be acceptable. It sounds like that kind of really identifies the position. Yeah, that's certainly an alternative too. And that was a number of cities use that title, internal audit manager. Yeah.
All right, one of the things that popped in my mind when Councilor Rolfing brought it up was with HR is, we do have a city attorney.
City clerk, city engineer.
But the functions of those, most of those are of a different administration body than this body. Mm-hmm. And that might become some of the confusion later is that who do you work for? Yeah. And But either way, we'll find a better name
Yeah,
for you.
yeah.
then.
It'll make it easier when you're talking to other auditors. If you say your lead internal auditor, they may say, well, can I talk to your boss? And you say, well, I'm it. And they go, oh. So it'd be better to have, I think, a different title, certainly. So
Audit czar.
audit czar, perhaps, yeah.
Everybody needs a czar. One thing I want to make sure, if everybody gets a copy of that charter.
Sure. I have copies, so when you leave, you can take them
Okay,
with
yeah,
you. If you
then
like. It's pretty short. It's only about 4 pages. so,
Right, and we should
yeah.
just review it to make sure if there's something else that we see,
Yeah, agreed.
do it all together. Okay. All right, very good. All right, we'll move on then, if we're done, Rich, to
Yep.
open discussion. Rich, do you have something you need to cover?
You already talked about the open position on the committee, so I was going to bring that up, but you mentioned it already, so.
Anybody else have anything they need to bring up or want to talk about? All right, very good. We'll go ahead, Councilor Olfing.
I'm concerned, and I will confess that I haven't done a very good job of looking around for someone to take to fill the position that's empty here, and I guess I would take some credit for not doing that, let's put it that way.
Great, you can bring donuts.
Right,
or something.
I'll bring donuts next time, but I guess I would encourage all of us to maybe come up with a name in the next couple of weeks that we could feed to you, and see what we can do, because this is still an important committee of the city, and if something goes wrong, we're gonna be looked at to asked why we didn't come up with it, or why it got by us, let's put it that way. And so we need somebody on here that's going to be competent and able to help us. So let's make an effort. I guess is what I'm encouraging us all to do.
Very good.
Do we have any type of document that explains the responsibilities or something that we could give to someone if they had an interest? And also, is there a formal application process?
Well, very good. I'll let Rich answer that. We've been through this a little bit.
I just emailed something to Greg last week. We don't have a formal document saying what the responsibilities are, but as far as an application, I had asked Lori Hogstad, our city clerk, if we had one, because it's kind of unusual. Most of our committees are city council members. And she said, no, we don't. But, however, the mayor, since he has something like 40 or plus commissions or boards, they do have something online on the city website. It's kind of a 1 or 2 page form, and I sent that to Greg. And it's a pretty good form. I think it's very usable. Just who you are and what your experience is and what committee you want to be on, and I guess why. And it's a pretty good form. So I think it's pretty much been already done. So
Could that be sent to us then, so that we could?
yeah.
Well, I mean, give it to, if we have someone that may be interested. Because now when I sit and think about it, there's about 2 or 3 people that I think, could have an interest and would have a background.
Yeah.
Right, Rich, I think if you could maybe.
Yeah, I could probably forward you what I sent to Greg. I can forward it to the whole committee. I just explained, the committee, how often they meet and how long the meetings are, and
Please.
that kind of thing. And then I attached that form from the city website. So I'll just forward that on to the committee. So.
Our newest member, Member Forbes, was recently strong-armed to be on this committee by me. Jason, do you have any comment about information you would have liked to have received or should have received or didn't get, or expectations so we can do a better job of finding the next candidate, that's all?
No, it was explained pretty well to me. And then I talked to Joe Marsh as far as
Oh, yeah.
the former Mitty. I knew him from before, so I just kind of picked his brain about responsibilities and time commitment and that sort of thing. So I had a little bit of inside information, I guess, before I agreed to sign on.
Right, so even Ann would probably be a benefit if you guys would be willing to talk to others who might be interested in joining. Would that be okay? Maybe include some of that contact information, if possible, in the email from Rich, and then everybody will have a tool that they could forward on to somebody to hopefully get them involved. Would that help? I think.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Anything else? Anybody? All right, well then we'll move to adjourn this meeting.